you all for sparing your time. Some of us are watching soccer. There's World Cup going on, and also today, all the best to Morocco, which is the only African country representing the continent Africa. So all the best to Morocco, and also I'd like to thank you again for joining. You spared your time instead of going to watch soccer. You wanted to discuss issues which affect Black people all over the world. And the topic of discussion for today, we want to touch on culture and how it unites us as Black people all over the world. No matter where we are, we do have culture and values. The city contribute much to us as Black people. So that's an area of discussion for today. And also after the speakers, we're going to have the healthcare lecture with Nana Kua as usual, as we discuss more on stress relief and the use of herb and the holistic medicine. Yeah, that's what we'll be discussing. And also lastly, we shall have Dr. Tyrene Wright leading us in Pan-African history lecture. So that's the lineup for today. And next week, probably Mr. Mapondera will be back in the US, and also we have the question and answer segment lined up as well on the Zoom call. Yes, so without wasting time, I can see our time is moving. We shall have our brother ambassador all the way from Guyana. His name is Ambassador Clyde Fowler. Yes, Clyde Fowler, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity in which I can be able to share on behalf of Guyana. Just to share on our culture, Guyana is a multi-ethnic country. Our traditions and our aspirations, our everything is a reflection of the persons who have made it possible. We know that here in Guyana, we're a country. We're directly at the Atlantic Ocean, and we share borders with Suriname, Brazil, and Venezuela. And what is unique about us is that Guyana is comprised of 6 nationalities, and the intermixing of those nationalities we call the persons that would have intermixed, we call them the Douglas people. However, here in Guyana, the Africans came through slavery. We have persons came as far as from Ghana. We have Ghanaian ancestry. We have persons coming all the way from the south of Africa, the north of Africa, being brought here and in the Caribbean, and which we share our lineage. Here in Guyana, we have the Indians who came as the indentured laborers, Chinese, the Europeans, and the Portuguese. And after slavery would have been abolished, they would have settled here. Here in Guyana, we have the Haitians, the Ghanaians, from Nigeria, the Nigerians. They are here in Guyana here, and because of the newfound wealth, they are part of Guyana helping to develop this country. Here in the capital city, we have 110,000 persons, when other countries would have millions and probably billions of people. We have only 110,000 in our capital city. We are 750,000 persons in 83,000 square miles. So we're a relatively large country with a small population, probably the smallest in South America. But what makes us unique is that here in Guyana, the Africans share the same cultural values, because coming from Ghana, coming from Nigeria, Haiti, and so forth, we have that cultural diversity amongst the Africans. But we still share in the same plight and discrimination as all the other countries. Here we have right now in Guyana, it looks as though we're going with the South African apartheid state, because only last night we were looking at the news, and it was being said that the Indians, because the government of the day is primarily Indian, and they are enriching themselves and their families and their friends and their constituencies. They're enriching them, leaving the African parts of Guyana impoverished. And thus we find that when examining the whole structure of the government, we find that the African people here in Guyana is being disenfranchised. We are going through the struggles to have economic values. Thus, we are having what we are now seeing, an increase in calling for, support from the ABC countries in order to get us to that place where we can be viable, and we know that we have a lot to offer. And through having the Nigerians recently, this government has recently put out the Haitians. They arrested them and they put them out of the country. The Nigerians, they started to criminalize them. So the Africans here in Guyana, we especially the Pan-African movement here, we are taking a stand. Recently, the government in the reparation activities that have been, we have a reparation committee who have been doing reparation for the African people. The government withheld funding from them. So we have been fighting, and I want to encourage us here on this platform to get involved. How do we get involved? By sharing the I Love Black People app, by sharing with our families and friends, letting them be aware of what is happening and sounding the voice. Sharing this platform is one way in which we can help mobilize and sensitize people of the plights of Africans throughout the diaspora and throughout, the various countries, to know that, for example, Ghana, the Ghanaian president was here on a visit, and they were treated with disdain by this regime. But we know that because of the varying things that have been happening, platforms such as these has been helping to sensitize and helping to show forth our unity. And thus, I want to say that we continue to share, we continue to come to classes and learn more of how we can become healthy and how we, as Pan-Africans, become more involved, can become more involved. We know that we are who we are because of the sacrifices that have been made before time and the sacrifices that are continue being made even now. So I implore you once again to share the app, share the I Love Black People. Let us spread the word. Let us continue to fight the good fight of faith. I am Ambassador Clyde Fowler. I am because we are. Thank you very much.
I am because we are. Thank you so much, Ambassador Clyde Fowler, all the way from Guyana. He was letting us know what's the situation right there in Guyana. We do appreciate that, for letting us know what's going on and also the quick updates on the issues affecting them on the ground. So thank you that once again, Brother Clyde Fowler, and also for your time, for your precious time. We thank each and every one of you for joining at this wonderful meeting where we talk freely, where we discuss freely. We appreciate all of you. So without wasting time, I'm crossing over to all the way to Nigeria, where our brother Ambassador Ifesinachi Uroko is located. Yes, brother Ifesinachi, we welcome you in peace.
Greeting everyone. Are you there?
Yes, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're participating from. I am Ifesinachi, a country speaker representing Nigeria. I greet everybody on board the platform. Today, according to the host, I think the topic he gave me is about culture. So, culture on its own is a very, very large topic. So I'm just going to give a summary of what I can give out. with the little time I have. So culture, as you know, in summary, is the people's way of life, the people's way of life, the way a group of people live, have decided, maybe through learning, maybe through experiences, to have gathered knowledge and live and survive through that system called culture. So culture, as people's way of life, is what determines a people. It is like the programming of mind that distinguishes a group of people or a category of people from the other group. You get my point? A word is a word because of where he's coming from and because of what have been passed down to him through his elder brothers, sisters, mother, parents, ancestors, and the chain continues. So I am who I am because of what I have been taught one way or the other, which what I have been taught is what my ancestors have accumulated in a period of time. So this is what is called culture, and this entails your religious life, the religious life of a people, the education system of a people, the social life of a people, the way they greet people, the way their motive in life. In culture is where you discover the motive of a group of people. As Africans are today, I believe God created them and placed them where they are, each and all the whole African people, where they are, where they inhabit today for a particular reason. And in the process of time, our ancestors have been accumulating experiences, which is supposed to help us on our race, which is supposed to help us to where we are destined, the part we are destined to play. As you can see, almost all the whole race in the world have a role playing. Russia, USA, Britain, Rome, Italy, all these countries have what they are doing. But Africa, as you can see, they are nowhere to be found. They don't even have any system. So in result, what is happening now is that Africans have lost it. Africans have lost their culture, and the greatest problem is that the loss is of those that we are looking up to. These are the ones that have been truly lost, like our brothers and sisters in diaspora, whom are our big brothers and sisters that we were supposed to be looking up to because they are privileged. But due to what they have passed through, slavery, colonization, imperialism, and all that, they have forgotten most of their culture. You see, for example, the way we do marriage today, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I think I can challenge anybody that the kind of marriage our brothers and sisters do in the diaspora is very, very different from the marriage the indigenous African people are supposed to do. You see, these are the things that, in fact, when you talk of unity in real life, you start from family because that is where the first bonding starts. So if the bonding process of each family is wrong, automatically there will be no unity. So culture plays a very strong role in people's life. But Africans are neglecting it, and this is why we are lost. This is why we can't unite, because there is nothing uniting us. For example, look at Christians. They have communions they take, and once you take this communion, you see that there is brotherly love. It will be very hard for a Christian to offend a Christian. But the hate between African brothers, like here in Nigeria, you see tribal hate. This is because we don't have anything in common. There is no communion, and there is no communion because we have lost our communions. Not that we don't have communions before, not that God did not give us communions in form of cultures. We have lost it. So we have to, if we want to, get what we want in terms of getting the Africa that we want, we have to go back and bring the positive things that is for us. It's not everything that is for us. The kind of marriage we do today, you see the number of divorce. That is not our part. Like here in Nigeria, we do two types of marriage. We do Western marriage, and we do traditional marriage. Currently, some people are even neglecting the traditional marriage. But even the Christians, if you go in the Bible, the wedding in the Bible was a traditional marriage that Jesus himself was invited to. They did not leave the family, the compound of the parent of the bride, and go to church to wed. Jesus was invited to the wedding, Jesus' mother, and when she was coming, which is Mary, when she was going, she went with Jesus. And that's where Jesus did his first miracle. It was a traditional marriage, which is culture of the Jews. Jesus was a Jew, and he kept, he practiced, and he maintained. So culture is supposed to be nurtured and grown, not to be jettisoned or eliminated or extinguished. No, Africans are getting it wrong. But I believe in the process of time, the light will come, because sufferings are lessons for those that wants to learn. When we suffer, we'll be triggered to invent ideas, and by that way, we will succeed. So let me stop here. I urge everybody to please support this great movement, which is I Love Black People app, Green Book platform. You see, so that people across can be safe, because safety first. So I urge you to download the app. You that have downloaded it, share it with your family and friends. Let us grow to achieve the numbers we need. I greet everybody that is participating in today's lecture. Thank you very much. I am because you are.
Thank you very much. I am because we are. Again, at the moment, all the focus is on the Green Book, which we are to launch soon. And also, please, you can check the digital Green Book to find the achievement which we did as a movement, as a Pan-African movement. We also put all the achievement which we managed to do through this year, 2022. So I urge all of you to visit our Green Book and get in touch with it. And also it will have a healthcare edition also in the Green Book about to read for free about our own natural resources, which we always learn and how they are important to us. Yes, Brother Ifesnach, before you go, can you touch on a few aspects on what is causing cultural erosion? Like you said, people are losing their culture. What is the greatest threat which is causing that?
The greatest threat, the cause of the erosions of culture. You see, this thing is happening mainly to those that experience colonization. Sorry for my pronunciations. I'm speaking English, it's not my mother tongue. So I'm even trying to make people understand me. So it's as a result of the experiences. Like, there is a documentary I watched one day on social media. This documentary is about a slave museum in Lagos, Nigeria, where people were harbored, where there they have up to 40 rooms, and in each of these rooms were containing like 30 slaves. The hypotenized chief, the hypotenized Lagos traditional ruler, which was captivated, took outside to Brazil, from Brazil to, I think, UK, have passed through a lot of slavery issues. He's a slave. He was bought. He was captivated and bought. So he reached an agreement with his slave master to return to Nigeria. So when he returned to Nigeria, the slave masters made him the paramount ruling palace in that Lagos Badagry. You know, you see that kind of empowerment. It's an agreement under duress. So this Lagos chief built that 40-something rooms. And in that place, there is a well water. I don't know if you know what is a well water. This well water contains a chemical that when you drink the well water, you forget everything that you have accumulated in your life. So you understand this, why people were quick to forget where they were coming from, why people were quick to forget their culture, why people were quick to forget their tradition. So I'm just telling you about Nigerian experience, which is in Lagos, Nigeria, the western part of Nigeria. Me, I'm from the eastern part. Now, that place, they have a toll gate. They said the toll gate is gate of no return. So once you are in that dungeon where they harbor them, you will be drinking from that well. Then that chemical will be accumulating in your body. And in the process of time, you forget everything that is you. Then when you are being transported to the Western world, to the slave master's place, to the people that purchase them, then you'll be forced into hard labor. And, you know, for you to get anything, you must negotiate for it. So when they were trying to get the right they got, when they were, like, you know, those that fought for their rights in the Western world, in the diaspora.
Yes, sir, brother Efesnachi. Thank you. I can see we are out of time, but
Okay.
due to network challenges, other speakers did join, but they left early. They told me that they're facing problems of our network. We need to continue discussing the issue of our culture and how it is affected us for our unity, as they say, as you said, and for the love which we should have among ourselves. Our tribes are beautiful, but people have been taking them wrongly and they end up hating each other. So we do support people in different tribes in the country. Here in Zimbabwe, we have two tribes as well, Shona and Ndebelés, and the others which are not popular, but the most popular are the Shona and the Ndebelés. But there's a hate among those tribes, which is absolutely wrong. So we need to discuss more on these issues of how important is culture among ourselves and how we should not forget our culture, and as well as not to follow the Western type of cultures which we now tend to follow these days and which brought hatred among ourselves. Again, thank you so much, Brother Efesnachi, for mind opening on your speech. We do appreciate you. And also again, you can turn on your cameras to receive a shout out from Nana Akua. We understand you spared your time instead of watching World Cup soccer where Moroccan, the last African country representing Africa, is playing right now. So we do appreciate that. Well, again, welcome Nana Akua to the healthcare lecture.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome, Mama. Oh, okay. Should I? Oh.
Yeah, it's over now. So hopefully next week we will continue on that. It's now time.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Greetings, good day, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How is everyone? Hey, Natalia, Hassan. How you doing, Award?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you, Ifsanache. I feel like this is the second time you had to stop when I come on, so don't be mad at me.
All right.
Hopefully you got to say everything you needed to say. Where's
Yes.
Yvonne? She's not on. Yvonne on call. Where Yvonne at?
Yeah, she's there.
Hey, Yvonne. Well,
Mhm.
greetings, everyone. Greetings, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. I don't know what has been happening with our numbers. It's no one's fault, though. I mean, those of us who are supposed to be here are here. And, you know, I've been into Pan-Africanism and pro-Black ideology for over 30 years, right? So, you know, you have to know, for those of you who are younger or maybe new to, you know, this consciousness, right, that it's not always something that people can be consistent and steadfast in, right? And so we know that sometimes people fall off and they get other interests, or they, you know, step aside and come back later. So I'm glad for those of you that are here and can be consistent. Consistency is definitely the key. So with everything we try to do for our people, whether it's different tribes or groups, or whether it's outsiders like white supremacists, you know, we always have to be consistent in our fight. And it can be discouraging, but I'll say, be encouraged, be steadfast, be consistent. And so with that, I will start our health lecture. So last week we talked about nutrition. We talked about the elements of nutrition. We talked about macronutrients, micronutrients. And so this week we are talking about herbs. And I realized I found some new handouts about herbs, and I really wanted to share just how much I love herbs. I think I usually these days light up when we're talking about crystals, but you know, herbs are definitely my first love. I've been an herbalist for a long time. So for almost as long as I've been a Pan-Africanist, right? I've been an herbalist, or maybe a little less than. I've been an herbalist. I kind of found that a little later, but I've always loved my people for a very long time. And so I would love for you to fall in love with herbs and natural medicine and natural cures, so that you know how to heal yourselves and your families and your community. And so whatever fight it is that we must endure, we have to be healthy. We have to be able to heal ourselves. We have to be able to take care of those who are not well, whether in the body, mind, or spirit. And so I want to share, and I always try to spend a few minutes before I come on to try to pull up the handouts. And let's see how successful I was today with doing that. I am not seeing what I tried to open. See them, but just not where I need to see them. Because I like being able to find things that you may not have seen kind of demonstrated in the same way. And not just having a kind of mundane list of things. And I don't think you can see it. You can't see my screen, right?
Yes,
Award,
we
or
can't
even
see anything.
you can't see anything.
Yes.
Ooh. So let me. Let me try again. It's just I have so many documents on my screen. I try to pull it up beforehand so you don't see everything I'm scrolling through. So if I were to share this, you're going to see, what are you seeing?
Zoom.
You just see Zoom.
Yes.
Okay, wait, so that might be okay. So now do you see herbs that heal?
Yes.
Okay, now we cooking with grease. Okay, so I was able to just, and these are just images that I pulled off of the internet, right? So we're just using these for informational purposes. I'm sure these documents belong to someone, but I thought it was just a good way to give you a picture or an image of these herbs as we talk about them, and then just share what they've traditionally been used for. I'd like to be able to make this a little larger, but hopefully you can see it. So these are just sort of a generic listing of different herbs. So I thought I would use this rather than my clip that I usually use, which has some of my favorite herbs. But these have a pretty good listing. So here, this kind of gives us an image of the herb and then maybe what it's primarily used for. But then also some other things that it's used for. So rosemary is listed here. And if you can still see me, you can see me getting my glasses because I cannot see. All this little stuff I pulled from this internet is too small for me to see. So if you're having an issue with coughing, right, they're mentioning rosemary here. So we know that you can add this to other things as well, but we know that it's good for loosening chest congestion. It's good for making phlegm easier to expel. We know this, it's an anti-inflammatory, right? And it can soothe a sore throat. So we also know though that rosemary is good for mental clarity, concentration. Spiritually, it's good if you need to be able to discern and make good decisions about what to do, who to deal with, what kind of decisions to make, again, because it deals with mental clarity. So we know that it does other things, but here it's highlighting how it's good for coughs and sore throats and things like that. We also know that we can use it in our foods, most rosemary for chicken, beans, roasted meats, poultry, potatoes, polenta, apples, things of that nature. Another one is mint. Mint is really good for a crampy tummy, right? So if you are having some digestive issues, and mint can really help to increase the digestion process. So it decreases the time that food is in the stomach. And so it allows it to move on through the other steps in digestion. And so mint is really good for that. It's really good to use as sort of an after dinner tea. And I really encourage you, and I know a lot of times we turn to like Lipton, which is like a black tea or white tea. It really doesn't have any health benefit. If you are a tea drinker, you really should be using some type of herbal tea that's going to have some healthful benefit for you. Mint is a good one. Any of these other ones really are really good. But what we want to do is use the ones that are going to give us some health benefit. So we know that peppermint contains menthol, so it's good for intestinal spasms, it's good for pain in the abdomen and the belly discomfort, things of that nature. But we know that if we are cooking with it, we can use it with eggplant, tomatoes, lamb, green peas, melons, cold beverages, things like that. I'm going to skip down to oregano. Oregano is really good for menstrual cramps, right? So in addition to your pastas and your mushrooms, tomatoes, your sauce, things like that, fish that you may cook with oregano, we know that it's also good for reducing or eliminating menstrual cramps. It helps the uterine relax so it can prevent those painful contractions. Trying to think, the oil of oregano is often used sort of like as an antifungal, antibacterial. So it has some antiviral properties. So oregano does many other things as well. Moving on to dill. Dill is really good for digestion. So if you suffer from any kind of upset stomach, dill is good for digestion. I really wish, oh, I think I can't increase this. How can I make this? Oh, there it is. Oh yeah, I'm struggling. The old lady was struggling. Technology is the key. I'm gonna use this, I'm gonna learn this technology in a second. I can see now, I was struggling, y'all. Okay, so is it bigger for you too? It should be bigger for you as well, right? Okay. So dill, we know, is an antibiotic. It kills harmful intestinal bacteria such as E. coli, but we know that it's good for, I mainly use it in all of my seafood dishes, but salmon, eggs, cucumbers, chicken, greens, different things like that. I haven't used curry really for any, I guess, medicinal purposes or healing purposes. But I guess because of the turmeric, because it has the curcumin in the curry, so it is an anti-inflammatory, so it's good for joint pain. I guess I wouldn't just seek out the actual curry powder. I guess I would have gone directly to the turmeric and ginger. But anyway, you see here how it helps with joint pain, muscle pain, and things of that nature. And we know that we cook with it with our lentils and rice and cauliflower and spinach. I don't know about mangoes and curry, but maybe. Parsley is good for bloating, right? We know that it's a natural diuretic, so it relieves bloating by reducing the water in the body, helps with water retention. It prevents salt from being reabsorbed into the body. Therefore, it's really good for the kidneys. So a lot of kidney cleansing or kidney tonic herbal formulas has parsley in it. We know that we might use it in grains and onions, pasta dishes, seafood dishes, tomatoes, things of that nature. Moving, now. See, you know, I do this all the time, y'all. Let's see it. I'm always getting the screen off and messing myself up. Okay, so basil. We know that basil is, oh my goodness, I keep doing that. So now y'all see when I mess up. Okay, basil is good for helping boost the brain's production of dopamine and serotonin, right? So we know this can help with pain and mood and relaxation and all of that, makes you happy. So basil is really good for that. I usually use basil in like hair products. So a lot of my hair shampoos and conditioners, I use basil in. It's a good hair and scalp tonic. But we know that it's good for mood as well. And we know that tomatoes and olives and mozzarella and pasta and fish and dishes like that, you can use for basil. Pizza, pesto, different pastas and sauces, we know that basil is used for. Cayenne is excellent for congestion. We know that this will help with sinus congestion and pressure. It's a good anti-inflammatory. And it's just one of those, it's considered a stimulant herb, but it's also one of those carrier herbs. It's one of those that will just help the efficacy of other herbs in a formula because it helps with circulation and it stimulates, it'll help that formula move and circulate through the body and do what it's supposed to do more efficiently. So cayenne is good overall. I keep doing that. This is annoying. So I think that was the last one. Let's go to this handout, herbs. No, that's a different one. I mean, the same one. I thought I was looking at something different. Let's go to cancer herbs. And again, this is just something I pulled off of the internet. I am not claiming that it's going to treat, cure, or heal cancer. Every time I try to scroll up, this happens. But we have found this handout that talks a little bit about different herbs that have traditionally been used against cancer. So we know cloves is one of the top 3 spices and antioxidant concentration. It contains different properties which will inhibit the oxygenation of LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, and can help with early onset of arteriosclerosis. Oh, this is not even the handout I thought it was. Cinnamon is also an antioxidant. Cinnamon is one of my favorites. I love the scent and aroma. It's very uplifting spiritually. Cinnamon is, but we know that this is good for inflammation, heart disease, and Alzheimer's. It's also good for controlling diabetes. Is often used in a lot of those diabetic herbal formulas. Allspice I've actually never used for any healing purposes, but it is considered an anti-cancer herb. It will help specifically with pancreatic cancer. Okay, so decreases the proliferation of pancreatic cancer cells. That's important because pancreatic cancer is a beast. So if there's any hope in that, it's worth trying. And again, this is just some traditional uses, no guarantees, but add this to your toolbox, your possibilities of things to use when trying a natural alternative, whether you decide to do it as an alternative or whether you decide to do it as a complement, you know, in addition to whatever treatments you might be using. Saffron, this is excellent for, if you remember previously, we've talked about saffron and how it's good for the skin, but it's also good in terms of the development of cardiovascular disease. So it helps fight against the development of cardiovascular disease, right? So it protects blood fats against oxidation, right? Which it can lead to cardiovascular disease. Fennel, I do like fennel. Fennel is another herb that we often use spiritually for cleansing and such, but we know that physically it is has been shown to help retard cancer cell growth and can reduce inflammation in the body. Oregano, we just were speaking about oregano, right? And so we know that it can be used topically as an antiseptic. But we know that it also can help fight against foodborne pathogens that can cause disease and things of that nature, therefore being a powerful antioxidant. Cumin, this is good for stimulating bile acid production and its secretion into the bowels. Garlic, we know garlic is a powerful antibiotic, antiseptic, antiviral, antibacterial plant. So it can help reduce blood pressure and can help retard cancer cell growth. Okay. Use the little hand there. Okay, mustard. So we know, and I don't know, one of the more common uses for mustard is preventing cramps. Muscle cramps. If you've ever had a cramp and you have, even if you don't have the powdered mustard seed here, even if you have the pasty yellow mustard that comes in a container that you put on your food, even if you just take a tablespoon of that, that can help with preventing muscle cramps. But we know, as listed here, it also is good for inhibiting the growth of cancer cells, especially in the gastrointestinal tract. Rosemary, we just mentioned, right? In the earlier slide, I talked about how it improves memory and clarity, but we know that it's also a powerful antioxidant that can detoxify carcinogens. Carcinogens are cancer-causing elements. Mint, we've talked about. Turmeric, we were just talking about. We talked about turmeric being an anti-inflammatory, but in this regard, it's giving you information of how it can slow the spread of breast cancer and can prevent strokes, and how it has an anti-aging effect on the brain and has anti-inflammatory properties. Most of us only know about the anti-inflammatory properties, but we know that turmeric does so much more. Basil, I think, was on the previous slide. Here they're talking about how it can prevent blood clots. That's very important. Ginger, we've talked about ginger before. We know that ginger is indigenous to different parts of the world, so it's easily found. We know that it can reduce the viability of gastric cancer cells. So that's important. Red pepper, or the cayenne we spoke about previously. We know that it has a lot of antioxidants, so this fights off various infections. It can relieve pain. It also can help stop bleeding. So a lot of uses for pepper, as we just mentioned previously. And then black pepper, we know that it's high in vitamin B. A lot of people use it for hair loss and things like that as a herbalist that made products. There are different things that I've used some of these herbs for. But in this regard, it basically increases the absorption of different minerals and vitamins, your selenium, your vitamin B, your beta carotene, and other nutrients. So this is good in terms of boosting the immune system and fighting off free radicals. These types of agents that get into the body and create havoc and cause disease. Black pepper is good for building up your resistance and your resilience against those things. Let's talk about herbs for the organs, right? I had previously had this handout, and I think I came across it again. So this just sort of breaks down herbs for different organs in the body, right? And there are many herbs for all of these different organs, but this handout is just pointing out one or two, right? So I think this is a really good cheat sheet. If you remember last week, I showed my little index cards that I used to make for my notes when I was learning and studying, right? This is a really good little cheat sheet because it gives you sort of an overview, just a quick hit on each organ as to how to address building and tonifying these parts of the body. So I thought that this was a helpful handout. So in regards to the heart, hawthorn, it even gives a recommended dosage for hawthorn extract. Hawthorn berry is good for circulation, regulating blood pressure, and therefore it's good for the heart, preventing heart disease and that sort of thing. The brain, bacopa, I'm not personally familiar with this herb, but this herb, along with lion's mane in an extract form, is good for the brain. I would imagine it's good for concentration, for memory, for oxygenation and circulation. Those are all things that you need for brain health. For the lungs, mullein extract is listed here. We know that there are many good herbs for the lungs. Mullein is a very popular one, but we have others like horehound, wild cherry bark, licorice, lobelia. There are many herbs that are good for the lungs, but mullein is a really good one. For the eyes, sea buckthorn oil. Again, they recommend how much to take of that, but this is good for the eyes. But we know that there are other herbs that are really good for the eyes, bilberry, eyebright, and others. Bloating. So I guess we're referring to the stomach here. They put bloating and not the stomach. Everything else kind of lists the organ symptom. But for bloating, organic coconut oil and activated charcoal is good. That is true. We know that charcoal is good for absorbing toxins from the stomach and moving it out through the body, through the intestines. We know that coconut oil is one of those good fats that does a lot. It can extract and pull toxins out of the body as well, and bring relief in something like a bloating situation or an inflamed situation. Sinuses, black seed oil. A lot of people use black seed oil for the skin, for the hair, and you see it used for sinus issues. The liver, milk thistle. Milk thistle is most popular herbs for the liver. We know there are many others, dandelion, yellow dock, turmeric is also good for the liver. But yes, milk thistle is one to always have on hand if you're dealing with liver issues. The lips, they have shea butter and cocoa butter. These are good oils for the lips for maintaining moisture. Some people add a lot of lip balms that will have mint. I personally don't like mint in my lip balms or my lip chapsticks and the nature. Your chapsticks are done, and it is pretty much some fat like butter or butter, a little bit of beeswax or candelilla, what essential like vanilla or coconut for nice natural flavoring lip balm. But these are good protectants for the lips. Kidneys, we find is one of, again, I will probably use dandelion for the liver. Dandelion, just like turmeric is good for the liver and kidneys, dandelion can be used for both. Chanca, piedra, not personally familiar with that, but these two are listed here for healing the kidneys. We know that uva ursi, buchu, juniper berry, herbs like that are also good for the kidneys. Parsley, where we had in a previous slide, that's also really good for the kidneys, and many others. Watermelon seed or watermelons themselves, cucumbers, all of these are really good for the kidneys. For the ears, just like at the top here with the brain, this bacopa and lion's mane, they're recommending for the ears. I like sweet almond oil and garlic as an ear oil. This is usually a pretty simple thing if you are having an earache or ear infection. That's sort of an old school remedy for ears. I want to say mullein. I want to say it's another herb that is put in there with the ears. But yes, bacopa and lion's mane for that. Urinary tract, cranberry is always going to be good. If you're using cranberry juice, or, well, if you're using cranberry juice, you're usually not getting the cranberries. Cranberries you usually find, at least in the States, you find during this holiday time, but otherwise they're not as easy to find. But usually you will find them to be very bitter. So most will have some kind of sweetener. What I would say is if you're not doing a cranberry extract and you're doing the juice, you have to make sure that the juice does not have any artificial sweeteners or too much sugar in it, but rather a natural sweetener that is not going to cause you more harm than the good you're trying to get out of the cranberry. Oregano extract. This D, Manos, I'm not familiar with that either. Cranberry is excellent. But again, for the urinary tract, these same herbs that I've mentioned for the kidneys will also do wonders for and things that you're all, because what you're trying to do is heal and cleanse the kidneys, and plenty of water. Teeth. Yeah, so of this, I'm not familiar either with this miscat powder, but definitely a coconut pool or coconut oil in your mouth will really help cleanse the mouth, strengthen the gums, clean the teeth. Activated charcoal. I also brush my teeth with activated charcoal toothpaste. All of these are really good for cleansing the mouth, cleaning the teeth and the gums. Colon, ginger, aloe, cascara sagrada, senna, slippery elm, turkey bark. There are many good herbs for cleansing the colon. And again, water is going to be important here. as well. You want to make sure that you are flushing and that the body stays hydrated so that things do not get dehydrated and hard and stay in the body. So that's one of the keys with cleansing the colon. And we know that we have to move our colon every day, and we have to do it at least once a day, but ideally at least twice a day. If you can do 3 times a day, great. But main thing is find this right combination, whether it's any of these or some other herbs, to make sure that you're cleansing the colon and allowing it to cleanse itself and flush itself every day. And then lastly, on this handout, joints. The curcumin or the turmeric curcumin, ginger, boswellia, these are all good anti-inflammatories. There's something also called sea cucumber. That's a good natural anti-inflammatory. Devil's claw is a good pain reliever. That's a good anti-inflammatory for joint pain. Again, water is going to be important for healing this type of pain as well. And what else I pulled? And we talked a little bit about, oh no, where's my option for enlarging this one? Okay, I'm not seeing it. I'm sure I'm looking right at it. I was trying to enlarge this, but this handout I came across, and I mentioned a couple of these. So cascara was mentioned. I mentioned slippery elm, fennel seeds, aloe, peppermint, chickweed, alfalfa, and then spirulina and wheatgrass and flax seeds. All of these are good foods and herbs to use for cleansing the colon, right? And then if we want to specifically kill parasites, right? If we live in an environment where there's farm animals around, and definitely we know in different parts of Africa, in different countries, we know that there are animals that move about freely, right? With that, we know that their feces is sometimes around. If we have our children that end up walking around in areas that perhaps animals have been and have used the bathroom, we very easy, or if we're just consuming the meat, or if we've handled the meat from these certain animals, we know that there's a likelihood that we've come in contact with parasites, right? And we may need to do these different types of herbs to cleanse and kill parasites from the body. If we work in certain farmland growing different foods, working the soil, whether barefoot or barehanded, we can come in contact with different parasites. And then of course, here in the States, people often do like sushi and these raw fish and different things like that. There are different reasons you may very easily come in contact with parasites. If you are at any risk of that, or just want to do a cleanse, walnut hulls or black walnut hulls is also what it's called. Wormwood, cloves, tea tree oil, pumpkin seeds, cardiarco, myrrh, wormwood is here. I think that those are the ones that come to mind. All of these are good at killing parasites, right? So if your children, you know, have been around animals or been farming or have walked barefoot in different types of soil that may contain parasites, doing some type of parasite cleanse is going to be a good idea. And I think that's all I had pulled up. Herbs or organs. I think that's what I came up with. Let me just see what else. Antibiotic herbs. Did we talk about that? Did I pull up the antibiotic herbs? We didn't do this handout, I don't think. And you all can see this. You can see healing in antibiotic herbs.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So some of these we've talked about already. The black pepper, the rosemary, cranberry we've talked about. We haven't talked about thyme, I don't think, today. So thyme is really good. It's an antibiotic. A lot of cough medicines, cold medicines will contain thyme. Thyme is also, you know, used in some hair and skin products as well. Savory, this is, yeah, an underused herb. I agree. This also has antibiotic and healing properties as well. Comfrey, I use comfrey a lot. I do a facial clay I make out of comfrey. I do a skin healing, all-purpose skin healing cream that has comfrey in it. This is really good for old sores, wounds, scars, marks. It helps reduce inflammation, sprains, broken bones, things of that nature. That's really excellent. Neem, we know, is indigenous to India and different parts of Africa. So we know that it has many healing and antibiotic properties as well. If there's one that grows in your community, use it often if need be. I understand it's also a powerful treatment for malaria and other tropical fevers as well. Cinnamon, we've talked about. Oregano, we've talked about. Lavender, we know that it has anti-fungal properties. It has antibiotic properties. It helps increase the white blood cells in the body to help that you need when the body is healing itself of some kind of wound or cut or sore or mark. And so that's necessary. I make a lavender, actually, I'm thinking about echinacea, but lavender is similar to that, where it's good for wound healing. It's good for eczema because it has that healing, cooling effect. Echinacea is what I was actually just thinking about, that increases your white blood cells. And this helps with healing different sores and wounds and things like that. Basil, I think we talked about. Boldo, I'm not familiar with Boldo. This has a gastrointestinal effect where it's good for gallstones, achy joints, bladder infections, things of that nature. We talked about mint. Chamomile is a really mild but really healing sedative type of herb. So this is good for especially young people or maybe seniors as well, people from a sensitive class that need to kind of be healed, but in a very calm, mild manner, not anything that's really aggressive or considered a stimulant. So it's not letting me out. Well, I think that was the last one. So I wanted to just do it a little different in terms of adding different visuals for our herb discussion. So I hope you found that helpful. At least you got to see some pictures and get some different explanations than how the other charts we've used previously. But if you are in need of the handouts, I have not posted them in the group. And I actually, Yvonne, if you'll add me into this current WhatsApp group again, I think I removed myself by accident, kind of on purpose, but by accident. All the previous groups I tried to remove myself from because there's so many messages. But the current one, you can put me back in that one. But I get so many WhatsApp messages. But I didn't post because I couldn't find or I couldn't put myself back in the current group. But yes, if you're not in the group though, feel free to email me. I will send you the packet. Next week, we'll talk about some other natural healing plants, such as homeopathics, flower essences, and essential oils, okay? So thank you for joining me. I see, yeah, so good, oh, somebody direct message me. Okay, I got a few minutes, I'll direct message you back. Okay, 2 direct messages. Okay, I have a couple of questions in the chat, but I'll answer them directly. So no problem, I do have a couple of minutes. So yeah, so as always, thanks for joining us, and I'll see you back here next week. And as always, I bid you good health and peace.
Thank you so much, Nana, for your precious time teaching us about the herbs. We really appreciate it. And also, I did share the email address of yours for those who would like some handouts. I think they are quite helpful, and people are always requesting for them. Thank you again for today's.
All right, thank you. You all have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend too. We're jumping off to Dr. Taryn Wright for our Pan-African History and Organizing class. Yes, Dr. Wright, welcome.
Thank you. Hello. Okay, so for today, you might not, well, you probably won't see me on camera because, can you all hear me? You
Yes,
can let
you
my
can.
pictures go. Because I'm moving around and yeah, so, and I'm going to be sharing our readings for, how come my picture is not even showing? All right, well, okay, so I won't be on camera. That being said, I'll be sharing my screen and we will be going over the reading that you will read this week. And hopefully everyone finished watching the film, The Journey in Man, a Genetic Odyssey. I'll take some questions, but what I'm going to do is go right to our readings for this week, which is the chapter that I just shared on Pan-African history. And it is actually from a book that I wrote called Booker T. Washington, The Making of Booker T. Washington in Africa, The Making of a Pan-Africanist. But this chapter discusses the history of Pan-Africanism. Okay, hold on. This chapter discusses the history of Pan-Africanism, chapter 2 of the book, and it breaks down the very international and dialectical relationship between African people that produced Pan-Africanism in particular. Okay, I'm disturbed. My picture is not even showing. I usually have a picture on here. So okay, but we'll focus right on the material. So this is the chapter, Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism and Pan-Africanist, chapter 2 of the book. And it begins with a quote. I have been remiss in the past when I covered this. I jumped right into the things that are on our learning outcomes, which are the definition, the major proponents of Pan-Africanism, and then two major historical figures of and proponents of Pan-Africanism, Du Bois and Garvey. But I want to take the time to give you some focus really briefly on this quote at the beginning of the chapter. So this is what you'll be reading this week. If those of you who are actually officially registered for the course, you see that this you'll see that this has already been posted. Can everybody see the chapter, the reading? Yvonne, can you tell me, or Award, can you tell me if you can see the reading? Hello? Oh my gosh. Yes, okay, good. Somebody let me know. All right, thank you. Okay, so the chapter opens up with a quote and it says, "There is, however, a tie which few white men can understand, which binds the American Negro to the African Negro, which unites the Black man of Brazil and the Black man of Liberia, which is constantly drawing into closer relations all the scattered African peoples, whether they are in the old world or the new." Notice the emphasis on all the scattered African peoples, right? I have rarely met in America anyone of my race who did not, in one way or another, show a deep interest in everything connected with Africa. The millions of Negroes in America are almost as much interested, for example, in the future of Liberia and Abyssinia as they are in their own country. There is always a peculiar and scarcely definable bond that binds one Black man to another Black man, whether in Africa, Jamaica, Haiti, or the United States. And so he gives you this real comprehensive understanding of the fact that, you know, essentially we are coming into closer relations, right? Which is constantly drawing the closer relations, the scattered African people. So he's talking about the fact that there is a bond between the African people of the world, and we're coming into closer relations. And that bond can be found between us, whether we're on the African continent, whether we're in Jamaica, whether we're in Haiti or the United States. And that is surprisingly to many, none other than Booker T. Washington, talking about African relations and relationships and our shared bond at this time in history. And this is 1900, okay, that he writes this. It's not published until 1901 and 1909, okay, in The Story of the Negro. That's the title of the book. That being said, it's interesting to see his perspective, whether real or imagined. He's drawing that from something. And I go in to share pretty much his not well-known ideation on the issue, right? I share how he develops as a Pan-Africanist, but like the film, I don't want us to get caught up with Washington as much as I want you to pay attention to the facts presented in this chapter, the historical facts, right? So I tell you a little bit about Booker T. Washington and his story and all of that, right? Why he's even interested in Africa at all. But what I want you to focus on this week is further into the chapter, which is page 16. You're not going to see the page number here. So page 16 is what I really want you to focus on in this chapter, because it begins to recall the history of Pan-Africanism in terms of the fact that it is this collective. I'm trying to figure out where to put that thing. Okay. Can you all hear me still?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, because I put that little icon out of the way so that you guys can see the chapter. All right, so what he really is focused on, I'm focused on in this chapter, is the specific history of Pan-Africanism and the very, multi-dimensional contributions made, meaning that there's contributions made from all over the diaspora. And there seems to be a collective consciousness. So everybody remember 2020 with this whole George Floyd incident, how once there was, an outcry or a challenge to what was going on, you saw Black Lives Matter marches all over the world, right? So you can think of Pan-Africanism, the energy with which Pan-Africanism emerges in the world, as similar to that, okay? African people everywhere are pretty much on the same page, on code, okay? And understand that there is a serious need for us to come together to deal with our common condition. And so what happens is, this is recalled by myself in this particular section of the chapter, right? So prior to the first Pan-African Conference, 19th and early century Pan-Africanism in the US was espoused and practiced by individuals like Bishop Henry McNeill Turner. And this is really a roll call, because this is a process where we become educated on some of the major proponents, okay? The major historical figures and contributors to the concept of Pan-Africanism. Remember, prior to this, the phrase did not exist, although I would argue the concept existed for eons, but the phrase did not exist, right? Pan-Africanism in particular. So he says, prior to the first Pan-African Conference, 19th and early 20th century Pan-Africanism in the US was espoused and practiced by individuals like Bishop Henry McNeill Turner, Martin Delany, Edward Blyden, Henry Highland Garnett, and Alexander Crummell. But as early as 1829, David Walker's appeal reflected on the history of African civilizations and made a connection between those in Africa and Africans scattered abroad. His appeal not only aimed to challenge the institution of slavery, but to educate the masses on African history and culture. Pan-Africanists amongst the African population in the Caribbean included the initiator of the first Pan-African Conference, Henry Sylvester Williams of Trinidad, Marcus Garvey's mentor, J. Robert Love, and Dr. J. Albert Thorne from Barbados. But decades prior to their emergence, the Haitian Revolution occurred and bolstered Pan-African consciousness in the diaspora as well. Haiti would produce Benito Sylvain and Antonio Furman, both who met Booker T. Washington in 1897 and attended the first Pan-African Conference in 1900. Out of Haiti came a wing of Pan-Africanists who created literary discourse on diasporic philosophies on Africa. The African population in Haiti produced Jean Prince Mars and Louis Joseph, who repeatedly explained that Haiti was the embodiment of the irresistible force of a united Africa. Pan-Africanism had a dialectical relationship characteristic to it, which allowed historic events like the Haitian Revolution to produce a response and righteousness among African people internationally. Similarly, in 1896, the Ethiopian victory over Italian imperialist forces in the Battle of Ottawa also bolstered the connection between diasporic Africans and those on the continent. Now, let me say this. This is important. The Haitian Revolution and even the Battle of Ottawa in Ethiopia against the Italians. What I'm in essence saying is that these major incidents would be sort of rallying calls or galvanizing events that put the rest of the African world on notice that, we are approaching the moment where we are fighting for the same thing and we are in relationship with each other. We're having a sort of international discourse, very much like what we're doing right now, right? All of us are in very different places, okay? Some are on the African continent, some are out here in the diaspora, some are in the United States, which is part of diaspora, but we could be in different parts of the diaspora, right? You could be in the Caribbean, you could be in the United States, right? Or you can be in Europe actually watching this, right? So Pan-Africanism had a dialectical characteristic to it. This is where I'm at right here, right? Dialectical characteristic to it, which allow historic events like the Haitian Revolution to produce a response and rise in consciousness amongst African people internationally. This is extremely important because when I talk about teaching this course and the fact that we are in the tradition, so we're on a continuum, it's important to understand that for you all, in the context of I Love Black People, you are actually doing something very specific with the technology and the tools that you have. But the mission of what we're doing is not new, meaning coming together, working on something together for the purpose of addressing our condition. This is not a new concept, okay, for us internationally, right? So the method in which we come together and address our condition may change, right? We can advance things because of technology, but the desire and the act of coming together to address our condition, this is not something that is new, okay? We can bring it right back to the year of 1900, which I'm about to cover, where they're organizing the first Pan-African Conference, which speaks to all of these issues, right? So this is an important thing to understand, especially when you are doing work of this kind. The idea is that, you should be emboldened, encouraged, fortified by the fact that you are on a continuum. You are continuing work that had began with by our ancestors over 100 years ago, plus really, okay? But in terms of formal, large international efforts, right? Like the first Pan-African Conference, we can go back to 1900 and understand that that was one of the biggest organized events that would bring us from around the world to talk about our common condition, right? It's a very important point. It's a very strong point. I mean, I think all of us should know or probably have heard about drawing strength from our ancestors in terms of the work that we do. Okay. And so this is a perfect example of that. When we invoke the history, we are in essence drawing, that strength from our ancestors and essentially affirming the fact that their work was not in vain, that we are on a continuum, that we are in the tradition and we're actually continuing the same work until it's done, right? Which is what is done. Done is we get to move around the world freely. We get to move around the world free of negation, exploitation, oppression, right? We get to move around the world, man, woman, and child, free from the threat of death for engaging in everyday goings on and activities. That's what the end game is, right? So they spoke to that at 1900. And that's a very important thing to understand. None of this, what we're doing is new. What we're using is modern means to execute ongoing struggle, to execute how we apply our strategies and tactics to the current and ongoing situation. So we have new strategies and new tactics, but we are attacking the same ongoing issue, which is racism, xenophobia, really the negation of our humanity worldwide. Okay, so I wanted to just point that out. So I want to move to, let me see. Okay, so let me take you back just a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Henry Sylvester Williams. It's important for you to know this one little tidbit, I think. Henry Sylvester Williams was actually a young man from the island of Trinidad, in the country called Trinidad and Tobago. And he would actually be the person who introduces Booker T. Washington to the term Pan-Africanism. Henry Sylvester Williams would coin the phrase. So he is the creator of that phrase, Pan-Africanism. And he is working with something called the African Association, and he is stationed in London, doing the work of this organization, although he hails from Trinidad, right? So it is with this level of developing consciousness that Booker T. Washington engaged the world. Shortly before the turn of the 20th century, he was formally exposed to the philosophy of Pan-Africanism, much in the same way as the rest of the world, through the coining of the phrase by the secretary of the African Association, Henry Sylvester Williams, right? So Henry Sylvester Williams introduced him to this. On behalf of the African Association, Williams wrote to Booker T. Washington for the first time in September 1898 to solicit his support in their efforts to organize for the benefit of African people. He extended membership to Washington while enlisting his assistance in promoting the organization in the US. He wrote, "I take it you are alive to the necessity of a general union amongst the children and descendants of Ham, as it would tend to create a respect for us, which he believed did not exist." Washington agreed and was eager to promote the organization. The objective of the African Association, as described by Henry Sylvester Williams, was to respond to the need for unity amongst African people in order to garner respect in the world. So I'll repeat that. That's a very important point. The objective of the African Association, as described by Henry Sylvester Williams, was to respond to the need for unity amongst African people. In order to garner respect in the world, the organization would make representation in cases of oppression affecting our people wherever found. Okay. So the organization is seeking to represent African people wherever we are found in light of our condition. And he contacts Booker T. Washington, one, primarily to get him to help to organize this conference that they intend to have in Europe, where they expect that African people will come from around the world. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I was thinking the same thing, like, why Europe? But what you have already by this time is you have a concentration of African people, right, already in Europe for various reasons, right? None of them that good, right? Because we are still in the grips of enslavement, even in some places. Okay, well, no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. They're not, we are not enslaved at 1900, right? But you have various places who have just come out of slavery in just, the last 20 years, even at that point in time, right? Brazil would be the last of all of them coming out of enslavement in 1888. So, we know that the plight of slavery is over, but the legacy of slavery is not gone, because overwhelmingly our people are still dealing with discrimination, dealing with oppression in the United States at that time. This is in the midst of the nadir, our lowest point, where Black people were commonly lynched for being progressive, okay? And to kill a Black person at this point in time, post-slavery, was not a crime in places like the United States, and wasn't a crime in Africa either, right? So we know about, at this very moment in time, the atrocities that King Leopold is exacting in the Congo, okay? He in essence killed almost 10 million African people in the Congo. And later on in my book, I actually talk about this, but at the time, I'm just addressing, the organizing efforts, but there's many things that are going on that decrease the life chances of African people, many abuses, dehumanizing acts. And so Henry Sylvester Williams and this organization is speaking to that fact that we have this common plight. And that is whether we are in the United States, whether we are in Africa, whether we are in Europe, okay? Right, so the objective of the African Association, as described by Henry Sylvester Williams, was to respond to the need for unity amongst African people in order to garner respect in the world. The organization would make representations in cases of oppression affecting our people wherever found. During the latter part of 1898, the association began planning the first Pan-African Conference in order to advance their aims. In June of 1899, Williams wrote Booker T. Washington from London regarding the conference and enclosed a circular requesting that Washington or a representative of his choice present a paper on lynching in the US. Washington accepted the invitation and promised to make it known as widely as possible. He not only promoted the conference through the Black press, he outlined the agenda and deemed it a very important movement on the horizon. The organization's desire to create a body that would foster unification amongst African people internationally was a much needed and progressive endeavor, according to Booker T. Washington, and therefore worthy of his support. So basically, Washington promotes the conference in the United States. He is in support of this. And that is why Henry Sylvester Williams is in contact with him, okay, or contacts him. Washington's objective was to promote the first Pan-African Conference to the masses of African people in America. In his letter to the editor, he wrote the British government's plans to hold an international event where representatives from various countries would gather in London, he explained, for the first Pan-African Conference, could benefit from the assembling of African people already taking place in England. So in connection, he writes this, Booker T. Washington particularly writes this to a newspaper and basically publishes the information about the upcoming conference. In connection with assembling of so many Negroes in London from different parts of the world, a very important movement has just been put upon foot. This is important because in terms of historical record, we don't know that anybody but Washington, Booker T. Washington, called the Pan-Africanism movement, okay? But he does. He calls it a movement, and he asserts that he doesn't think it's going away anytime soon, I guess because he understands the necessity of it, right? So a very important movement has just been put upon foot. It is known as the Pan-African Conference. Representatives from Africa, the West Indian Islands, and other parts of the world asked me to meet them a few days ago with a view to making preliminary program for this conference. And we had a most interesting meeting. It is surprising to see the strong intellectual mold which many of these Africans and West Indians possess. So he's saying, African people from the continent and the Caribbean, the West Indies, because there's really no West Indies, the Caribbean, have a strong intellectual mold, and they're certainly interested in this movement, that this thing called Pan-Africanism that is going to be what he expects is a movement. So I'm getting you started there. What you should come out of this chapter knowing is 1, about the first Pan-African Conference, okay? 2, about some of the proponents all over the African world mentioned on page 16. So the major proponents and players in all of these different locales who are asserting Pan-Africanism. So it's sort of like a chorus of voices. And that was why I wrote this chapter, but that particular page the way I did, meaning like a roll call, showing you that almost everywhere around the globe, we are calling for the same thing. We understand out of necessity that we have to come together, right? And so that was the purpose of writing that particular section the way I did, and the chapter as a whole the way I did, because I want to recreate the time, right? The period, so you could understand what the climate was, what the attitudes were at that moment in time. So Washington deemed the plenary sessions held in London a success. In his letter from the Indianapolis Freeman, he shared an outline of the proposed agenda for the conference, and with that, he gave his opinion. According to him, it would be one of the most effective and far-reaching gatherings that has ever been held in connection with the development of the race. Consequently, he argued, as many of our people as can possibly do so to attend the conference. As the conference grew near, Henry Sylvester Williams wrote Washington from London and asked him to present a paper, this time on sustainability. Now, but Booker T. Washington will ultimately not attend the first Pan-African Conference. He would not attend, but he would be the participant of many of the plenary sessions, and Du Bois would attend along with many others. And Du Bois would be the youngest in attendance. So I want you to read this chapter with special attention to, those points. And then I go on to address the 2 major Pan-Africanists of their time, one being W.E.B. Du Bois. And I'm scrolling forward so I could let you see who they were. One being W.E.B. Du Bois, right? A very young Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, initially a family friend and mentee, Washington, Later, Du Bois became Washington's chief critic. He founded the Niagara Movement and the NAACP, a proponent of Pan-Africanism and direct protest who pushed for social and political rights in the US. And then none other than Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who launched the first mass organization of the African world from his base in Harlem, okay? And so I discussed Washington's relationship with both of them, but they give you some insight in terms of how they emerge and what their objective is. What I'm basically arguing in here is that they are all Pan-Africanists, okay? But the way they would approach Pan-Africanism, and I'm gonna go to the last section of here, the way they would approach Pan-Africanism is different, okay? Meaning they had the same core, and you'll come out of this chapter with a working definition, which is the unity of African people for the purpose of eradicating oppression, right? Now, the unity of African people for the purpose of eradicating oppression. Now, the way one approaches that can be very different. Du Bois would do that through organization, okay? Washington would do that through a concept called independence through industry. That is the method in which we would, or the arena in which we will unify. Du Bois will produce not only the Pan-African Congresses, but other organizations. And the vein in which he does it at the time that he establishes it, doesn't realize it as far reaching as it is going to be. Meaning when he establishes the Congresses, he expects them to be continuous Congresses. But he does not know that the Organization of African Unity, which would lead to the primary vehicle through which African leadership will discuss African independence on the continent. He does not know or foresee that at the time, right? All he knows is that I attended the first Pan-African Conference in 1900. By 1919, the Pan-African Congresses are established and they are continuous, but he is the only one living that had attended the 1900 conference. So he not only is the sole survivor, but he is in the embodiment, so to speak, of the 1900 conference because he does not forget it, right? He does not forget the mission. He does not forget the desire and the expectation. And so he initiates the 1919 continuous Congresses, whatever by 1919, the year 1919, right? 19 years after the first Pan-African. He believes in organizational bodies, and that is the vehicle through which he advances Pan-Africanism. Booker T. Washington believes in independence through industry, and he spreads that idea and concept once perfected at Tuskegee throughout the African world. And then Marcus Garvey, once again, also a believer. He is a disciple of Booker T. Washington's, if you didn't know that. I explained that in this chapter. Is a very important and interesting section of the chapter. But Marcus Garvey believes in organization, and he creates an organization that perpetuates this concept that Washington had of independence through industry. And so he organizes the UNIA, Universal Negro Improvement Association, with the objective of having every Black person in the world have membership. He is able to single-handedly organize the African world with his mastery of one specific industry, and that is the printing press. He masters the printing press, produces the paper called the Negro World, and with the Negro World that is distributed on every continent are African people and is in every port where there are African people, port and dock. he is able to organize the African world in a way it has never been before or after. Okay. So the Universal Negro Improvement Association was the largest mass Black nationalist and Pan-Africanist organization the world has ever known. It conceptually comes out of, if you read this whole chapter, you will see conceptually it comes out of the Tuskegee model. Okay. And so Garvey, that is his path to Pan-Africanism. So all three of them will have a very specific niche as it relates to Pan-Africanism and that. One last thing, this is an original image that comes out of something called the First International Negro held in Tuskegee. Well, this conference is sort of like Booker T. Washington's Pan-African Conference in the sense that it's members of the African world from all over the globe to come to Tuskegee to observe their perfection in various industries and take from it the best practices. Because once again, Washington's path to independence and liberation is independence through industry, to own and operate industry, to produce what we consume, to produce sustainable communities. This is why when you go back and read it, you're not surprised to see Henry Sylvester Williams, when he makes a second request to Washington to participate in the conference, he says, could you come and do a presentation on sustainability? Because he has already come to the understanding that this is one of the things that they're perfecting. And then and now, sustainability and industry are two things that still impact the reality of Africans today. Okay, one of our biggest problems everywhere we are, where we have nations, is the fact that we are consistently producing raw goods, and we are having those raw goods be the way in which other forces exploit us. Okay, so we have the raw goods, but we don't have the industry to mass produce and or manufacture those goods. So European nations extract the resources from our countries, put whatever it is into a can or a box and send it back to us and exploit our economy because we pay for it and we pay taxes on it. That is the crisis and the dilemma of most of the African world, whether it's in the Caribbean, Central South America, or on the continent of Africa today. And so Washington is saying, whatever you consume, you need to be able to produce it from start to finish. And he knows that on the African continent, to do that means a serious shift towards independence. Okay, when you're doing it for yourself, producing goods from start to finish, nobody can come in and rape your economy by extracting whatever from you, jacking up the price, so-called manufacturing and refining it and sending it back to you and to exploit you, or sell it and make triple profits off of what they actually paid you. So he is very aware of that. He invites most members of the African world to Tuskegee to share Tuskegee methods of sustainability there. And this conference takes place in Tuskegee in 1919. I do want to just point out, like, Tuskegee is known for making their own buildings, but not only making the buildings, but making the bricks that make the buildings. So this is interesting right here because you're seeing one of these structures that exist at Tuskegee. And we know that most of the buildings, early buildings, and are made by Tuskegean students and members of the community, possibly. Okay. So I'm going to leave it right there. Please read this chapter, finish the chapter. It's a very exciting chapter. You get some insight to the relationship between Du Bois and Washington. You get some insight into the relationship between Garvey and Washington, who signed every letter, your faithful and humble servant. that he wrote to Booker T. Washington. So you get a very good insight, the communication, direct communication between these historical figures at a time where Pan-Africanism was young in the world, okay? I'm gonna leave it right there. I am going to stop my share. I don't know, my little picture is not showing up, but okay. So today you just got a chance to focus on my voice. Okay, thank you. Somebody share something with me about the AADDI.org. Okay, great. All right, thank you. Yes, so you get, I mean, listen, we need concepts like that to stay around. Okay. Hi, Haki. I don't know why you're telling me to email you. I have your information. Okay. Inside, please share these slides on Pan-Africanism to me via me email. No, this chat. Okay, so this whole chapter, Peter. I mean, whose name is this? Okay, Peter and Wezi. Okay, so Peter and Wezi. This chapter is in the WhatsApp group. Make sure you are in the WhatsApp group, and you will see. You get this whole chapter. I give you the chapter. So you can just go on WhatsApp and I give you the entire chapter in WhatsApp, the entire chapter 2, and it's in PDF form. Who is, okay. Oh, okay, good. Thank you, Haki. Yes, there's a US Africa conference next week. I know about it. I don't know if Natalia Faith is asking me to share. Okay. Yes, I love Dr. Arikana. All right, you guys are making me feel guilty. I have to be, okay, so you're gonna make me be in DC next week or something for this, all of this going on. Oh, okay, all right, no, all right, yeah, you're talking about, right. Yeah, but Joyce Cooper, I submitted my stuff and I don't know when I'm gonna be told whether or not I'm gonna be part of this conference. But maybe I'm gonna reach out to Dr. Arikana myself. Anyway, okay, so I don't see any real questions, but hopefully you guys got some bare bones information. This chapter is very important. It gives us like the share history, right? Like the bare bones history of Pan-Africanism as a budding concept. And now, you know, there are various expressions, but at the core of all of the definitions. So for example, when you read the chapter, you'll see that I even include Osage for Kwame Nkrumah in the discussion. And I say that, you know, this is not even, you know, Pan-Africanism is expressed by him in terms of, you know, the unity of African people, the unity of African people under scientific socialism. So, and then I say that, you know, Du Bois is the unity of African people through organization that advances, you know, Pan-African, you know, Pan-Africanism. So in other words, the unity for the purpose of eradicating oppression, but we still need, you know, strategies and tactics. And each of them, all the proponents of Pan-Africanism will have a number of strategies and tactics to address our condition. What I must propose and say is this: the core of Pan-Africanism always makes it plain that we should be the beneficiaries. Pan-Africanism is not just unity, but it's the unity for the purpose of addressing our condition. So if we get together in a group, but we don't talk about our condition and we don't come up with strategies and tactics to address our common condition, that is not Pan-Africanism. Okay? That's just some Black folks and African folks getting together. But when we address our condition, that is specifically Pan-Africanism. And even more when it is to our benefit. If we do not benefit it, if it's to someone else's benefit, it is not Pan-Africanist in nature, which is why it's very interesting that, there are other voices that have joined this chorus in terms of my work and are talking about Tuskegee's role in other places, like Zimmerman in particular. And he starts to talk about Du Bois's role in the Paris Exposition as, another form of Pan-Africanism. No, it's not. That was something that was done by the American government to the benefit of the American government and the colonial world, right? Colonial administrators of Africa. I don't want to go too deep, so I don't want to, go too far in that direction. But my point is this. Two things. Pan-Africanism was always focused on our condition as African people. Pan-Africanism is always to our benefit in measurable ways. If there are no benefits to us, then that's not Pan-Africanism. Okay, so do you know if guns was the first product that was manufactured? No, I don't think guns were the first product, but I think they broke the mold. Do you understand? I think, it allows them to skip ahead of numerous civilizations because they can kill from a distance. Was it guns or the printing press? I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I don't have expertise in either, right? Gun making or printing press, meaning, or the history of. But I would personally imagine that the printing was possible long before, because printing, people are writing and printing before the existence of guns. Now, the printing press is the ability to mass produce what you're writing. And so I don't know the exact date that comes about. And then I don't know the exact that becomes accessible to the African world, right? Mass production of a given thing. But Garvey has cornered the market on it very early, okay? It is single-handedly, at least he comes into the United States in 1916, and he writes Booker T. Washington 2 years before that. Well, Booker T. Washington, by the way, is the person who invites Marcus Garvey to the United States. Booker T. Washington, he invites him to come see Tuskegee, the sustainable entity. And I'm realizing right now that I did not give you blow for blow in terms of the relationship with Garvey and Washington, but I'll cover that next time. Yes, Booker T. Washington is directly responsible for the presence of Marcus Garvey in the United States. And the UNIA is modeled after the Tuskegee model, hands down. And that's not my own opinion. You can read the chapter. Marcus Garvey tells Booker T. Washington that and sends him a pamphlet when he establishes the UNIA. And he establishes the UNIA as a result inspired by that conference I showed you the picture of, right? The International Conference on the Negro, all right? Because there were 8 educators there from Jamaica who attended. And in that conference, one of the resolutions in the conference was to erect a Tuskegee-like institute in Jamaica. And Garvey gets word of this from the 8 educators who attended and saw Tuskegee firsthand. And he is inspired. He begins to raise money for a school. What school? That Tuskegee-like institute in the resolutions of the conference supposed to be built in Jamaica. So he does work. He contacts Washington immediately after this conference. He establishes a relationship with him. They correspond for a couple of years from 1912 until the time of Washington's death in 1915. and they develop a relationship. I give you, that's why the chapter is important to read. So I'm introducing you to the chapter and the content, and you can engage it, and then we'll discuss it. We can discuss it this week as you guys read it, but we'll definitely discuss these particulars when we meet on Saturday, okay? All right, so direct connection between Garvey and Booker T. Washington, right? There is no Marcus Garvey in the United States without a Booker T. Washington. Even his philosophy, race, pride, and self-help come from the Tuskegee model for self-help, okay, and sustainability. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going to stop it there. Oh, wow. So I'm 20 minutes over. I thought I was doing good, but I'm not. So I'm going to stop it there. Thank you all for taking your time. Sorry, I'm not on camera this time, but I will be next week. And I wish you all a good week. Stay safe. I am because we are. Okay.
Yes.
I'm because yes, thank you so much, Dr. Tarin Wright, for a wonderful lecture. We really appreciate that. And also would like to thank everyone who was with us to the end of the lecture. We appreciate all of you guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay safe through this festive season. Again, love and peace. Bye-bye.